There is a lot to enjoy about The Force Awakens. I think J.J. Abrams did a fine job and deserves the credit for his directing. But the most fascinating part of the movie lies in the most important aspect of this movie, which is the characters. What we loved most about the original Star Wars trilogy wasn't the big spectacle. Yes, it was awe-inspiring to look at, but what drew us to the story was the characters. If Luke was a whining kid that had no redeeming quality, why would we care about his journey? If Han didn't have a charming personality, why would we care for his life? And if Leia was a weak and generic damsel in distress, why do we idolize her? In fantasy and sci-fi, the story is far away from our reality, that we have to cling on to the characters to feel part of the story. And this is why the original Star Wars works so well, and why The Force Awakens is worth the praise. Rey, Kylo Ren and even supporting casts are what makes The Force Awakens so enjoyable. So why do we love Rey, but love to hate Kylo Ren? The reason Rey is such a relatable character is because she is no one that becomes a someone. Her introduction is a presentation of what her life consists of. She scavenges for materials to get food, she's alone and has been on Jakku for a long period of time, but what makes her endearing is her belief and hope of a greater adventure. The shot of her putting on the pilot helmet is an indication of her hope of a greater life, a life away from Jakku. But just like anyone, she is reserved by the chance of leaving Jakku for something out of her comfort zone. However, Rey isn't a perfect character. She often does things without any reason or explanation. We are never shown before she flies the Millennium Falcon that she is an accomplished pilot, and she just happens to know how to use the Force. In defense of The Force Awakens, arguments can be said that the Force is teased within her when she touches Luke's lightsaber, but the leap from not understanding the Force to knowing how to use and utilize it is a big leap we must take. And the reason we take this leap and accept her knowledge and power is because we want her to succeed. Her character might not have a lot of depth, but I must remind myself that Rey has to be relatable to every demographic. The exception has to be made with Star Wars because of how massive the fanbase and the cultural impact the movie franchise has had. I cannot tell you any other franchise that has been accepted by 3 generations. So the task at hand was to create a character that doesn't offend anyone and can be loved by 7 billion people. And that's what Rey is. She is kind, passionate and full of hope. What Rey had to be in The Force Awakens is someone that everyone sees themselves in, and she succeeded at that job. From little girls to the die-hard fans 30 odd years ago see themselves in Rey. This is however her downfall because she, by far, is the least interesting. Finn, Poe, Princess Leia, Kylo Ren, Han Solo and even Luke are more interesting characters. This leaves Rey in a position of power for The Last Jedi, because her character hasn't been fully explored, leaving the doors open for any possibility. Rey isn't the most complex character because her story has just begun. We are only 1/3 into her arc, and from The Last Jedi trailer, her motives and beliefs are going to be the central point of the movie. But let me say this, if Rey, a character the majority of people like, did turn to the dark side, what do you think the reaction would be? Maybe on the same level as this.
I am your father.
For me, Kylo Ren is the most interesting character in The Force Awakens. His dilemma with the dark side and feeling something for the light is fascinating because he is someone that is still fairly new to the Force, and the internal struggle he faces leads to his downfall. Kylo Ren is a flawed character in the best way, and ultimately the flawed characters are the more interesting ones. In the end, Kylo Ren is his own enemy due to his self-doubt about his abilities. In many ways, the way he looks up to and idolizes Darth Vader is very similar to this modern age of comparing oneself to society's and our own high standards. And even Rey sees this and utilizes his self-doubt. The pressure Kylo Ren puts on himself is the reason he makes many mistakes, and his constant attempts to appease Supreme Leader Snoke makes him delirious to these mistakes, leading him to becoming arrogant when facing Finn and Rey, which he ultimately loses to. I believe his character is summed up by his tantrums. When things do not go his way, he cannot deal with the pressure that he puts on himself. The light is still there in Kylo Ren, even though he killed his father, Han Solo. The aggravation of the wound by aggressively punching it is a reminder of his actions. This could be looked at as a coping method for him, as the loss of his father, yes in his own hands, is still a traumatic experience. In some ways it can be hinted at as him self-harming as a way to cope with the loss. Now this could be me looking way too much into it, but tell me what you think and what this means down below. Ultimately Kylo Ren is the cause of his own downfall by his naivety and self-doubt. Kylo Ren, just like Rey, have had the foundations of their characters built in The Force Awakens, and I can't wait to see where their character goes in The Last Jedi.